Growing up in the quiet suburbs of Ohio, there was little excitement in Kyle's life. At 14, he wasn't much different from any other kid his age. He wasn't particularly athletic, nor was he a social butterfly. Instead, Kyle found solace in the world of technology. Unlike the bustling crowds at school, the world behind a screen made sense to him. Logical, predictable, yet infinite in its possibilities. Kyle's room was his sanctuary. Posters of video games and sci-fi movies lined the walls, but the most prized possession was his sleek, black laptop that his parents had gifted him for his birthday. They thought it was for schoolwork, but in reality, Kyle spent hours deep diving into internet forums, learning about hacking, coding, and the mysteries of the deep web. He wasn't a bad kid, just curious. The idea of hacking fascinated him. The power to access restricted areas, to uncover secrets others had hidden away. It was intoxicating. Kyle began teaching himself basic coding, first from YouTube tutorials and later from underground forums. Every night, after finishing his homework, he'd open his laptop and begin practicing small exploits. Nothing too illegal, at first. He hacked into his school's grading system, not to change his own grades, but just to see if he could. That sense of control was a thrill, like a puzzle only he could solve. His parents, unaware of his nocturnal activities, were proud of his dedication. They thought he was preparing for a bright future in computer science, perhaps even a job with a big tech company. Little did they know, Kyle was already walking down a much darker path. Over time, Kyle's fascination with hacking grew into an obsession. The small exploits he'd started with no longer satisfied him. He wanted more power, more access, more secrets. It was during one of his late-night internet dives that he stumbled upon a forum thread discussing a legendary hacker named Shadow. According to the rumors, Shadow could access anything, from government databases to the darkest corners of the web, and he had never been caught. Kyle was mesmerized. He began to idolize Shadow, reading everything he could find about him. There were stories about how Shadow had once infiltrated a multi-billion-dollar corporation system, holding their data ransom for millions, only to release it to the public for free. Others said Shadow had taken down human trafficking rings by exposing their networks. Kyle didn't know what was true, but one thing was certain. Shadow had power, and Kyle wanted that power too. One night, after weeks of lurking in underground forums, Kyle received a message. It was brief and cryptic. "You want in? Prove yourself." The message was signed with a single letter, S. Kyle's heart raced. Could this be the legendary Shadow himself? The instructions were simple. Breach the security of a specific website within 48 hours and leave no trace. Kyle didn't ask questions. He saw this as his chance to prove himself, to step into the shadows and gain recognition from the best. The website was a small, obscure government portal. Nothing too important, at least, that's what Kyle told himself. He spent the next 2 nights barely sleeping, working on cracking its defenses. It was harder than anything he'd ever tried before, but the thrill kept him going. When he finally succeeded, the adrenaline rush was unlike anything he'd ever felt. He had done it. He was in. But there was no time to celebrate. As instructed, he left no trace, carefully covering his tracks, and sent a message back to S, confirming his success. Moments later, another message appeared. "Welcome to the dark side, kid." From that point on, things started to spiral out of control. Kyle couldn't believe what had just happened. He had successfully gained entry into an elite circle, a secret world that most people never even knew existed. It was intoxicating, the thrill of knowing he was one step closer to becoming like Shadow, his idol. Yet, as the rush of adrenaline subsided, something else began to settle in his gut: doubt. He was no longer hacking for fun. This was real, and he had crossed a line. Still, curiosity overpowered his hesitation. Over the next few days, S sent Kyle more tasks, each one progressively harder. He began breaking into more sensitive systems, pulling confidential data from corporations and small government offices. The thrill of each successful hack kept Kyle glued to his screen. His skills were improving rapidly, and so was his confidence. But things began to change. What had started as a game, a series of digital heists, soon took on a darker tone. The next assignment from S was a bit different. Kyle's instructions were simple. access the email servers of a local law firm, retrieve a specific set of documents, and send them back. Cal didn't ask why or what the documents were for. In his mind, he was proving himself, climbing higher in the hacker hierarchy. Breaking in was harder than anything he had tried before. This time, the security was stronger, the risks greater. But after hours of intense focus and coding, Cal broke through. He sifted through the firm's documents and found what S had requested, a series of legal files detailing an ongoing criminal investigation. Without a second thought, he sent the files back to S, feeling another rush of triumph. But that feeling didn't last long. Moments after completing the task, Cal received another message. Good work. Now watch the news tomorrow. The next morning, Cal woke up to headlines about a high-profile lawyer found dead under suspicious circumstances. His heart dropped. That law firm he had hacked into was the same one handling the case. The realization hit him like a truck. Was this a coincidence, or had his actions played a role in this man's death? Cal sat in front of his laptop, staring at the news, trying to make sense of what had happened. He felt sick. All he had done was access files, just another job. But the timing was too close. Had he unwittingly become part of something much larger, much more dangerous? For the first time, Cal considered walking away. He knew this world was dark, but he had never imagined it could lead to something like this. Yet, just as he was contemplating quitting, a new message popped up from S. You're in too deep now. No turning back. Kyle's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his mind racing. Could he really just stop? Could he walk away without consequences? His thoughts were interrupted by another message, this one more chilling than any before. We know who you are, Kyle. He froze. They knew his name. Suddenly, everything around him felt suffocating. His bedroom, once his sanctuary, now felt like a trap. His laptop, his greatest tool, had become a weapon against him. Kyle's mind raced through the possibilities. How had they found him? He had been careful, or at least he thought he had been. His stomach churned with fear. He was no longer the predator in this game. He was the prey. Another message came through. Follow the next steps, and we'll keep your secret. Fail, and everyone finds out what you've done. Kyle's hands were shaking as he read the words. He was trapped. The very thing that had given him power, his ability to hack, was now the thing that could destroy him. His world was spiraling out of control, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The next task wasn't just a hack, it was sabotage. S wanted him to plant malware into a company's security system, crippling it from the inside. If Kyle didn't comply, the consequences were clear. His identity would be exposed. His face, his name, his hacks, all laid bare for the world to see. And worst of all, his parents would find out. He imagined the disappointment in their eyes, the shame. But it wasn't just shame he feared anymore. It was prison. He was no longer just some curious teenager playing around with code. He was involved in something serious, something dangerous. The days blurred into nights as Kyle continued working for S. He barely left his room, his once healthy curiosity about technology now replaced by a sickening dread. Each task felt heavier than the last. He hacked into banks, stole encrypted data, and brought down security systems, all under threat of exposure. His life was no longer his own. And then, one night, everything came crashing down. Kyle had always been able to compartmentalize his fears, pushing them deep down as long as he stayed ahead of the game. But after weeks of working under the constant threat from S, the cracks in his mental state began to show. He hardly ate, his grades plummeted, and he avoided his friends. His parents, once proud of his tech skills, grew concerned as they watched their son's personality change. Kyle, however, couldn't tell them the truth. He couldn't tell anyone. Late one night, Kyle received another message from S, one that chilled him to the core. Final task. Fail, and we reveal everything. It wasn't just the usual hack this time. S wanted Kyle to infiltrate the servers of a multinational corporation, an investment firm with ties to powerful individuals. The goal? Plant a backdoor in their system, granting permanent access to the company's most sensitive financial records. Kyle's heart pounded as he read the instructions. This was far beyond anything he had done before. If he got caught, it wouldn't just be exposure. It would be prison, federal crimes. He wasn't just some kid in his bedroom anymore. This was the real world, and he was in way over his head. But what choice did he have? S had him cornered. Kyle knew that if he didn't go through with it, everything he had done, the school hack, the government files, the law firm breach, would be linked directly back to him. His face would be on the news, his future destroyed, and his family disgraced. The guilt was unbearable. Every keystroke felt like a weight pressing down on his chest, suffocating him. As the hours passed, Kyle worked through the night, trying to break into the corporation's impenetrable firewall. His fingers trembled as he entered lines of code, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion. But for the first time, something didn't feel right. This wasn't just a test or a challenge anymore. It was wrong, deeply, morally wrong. As he was about to initiate the final command to create the backdoor, Kyle hesitated. His mind raced. Was this really worth it? Could he live with himself, knowing he was complicit in whatever S had planned? Kyle's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He wanted to stop. Every fiber of his being screamed to walk away, but the fear of what S could do to him kept him frozen. And then, a new message appeared on his screen, flashing ominously. Do it. Now. Kyle's pulse quickened. He was suffocating, trapped. In a moment of sheer panic, he shut his laptop down. The screen went black, and for a brief second, he felt relief, as if he could pretend that none of this had ever happened. But then, his phone buzzed. He hesitated before picking it up, his hand shaking as he unlocked the screen. A single message from an unknown number. Big mistake, Kyle. Before he could react, a strange noise came from his laptop. His screen flickered back to life, showing lines of code rapidly scrolling across. He hadn't turned it back on. His heart raced as he watched helplessly. The computer wasn't under his control anymore. Suddenly, all of his files, personal photos, homework, and even his chat logs appeared on the screen. He watched in horror as they were systematically deleted, one by one, leaving nothing but a blank, lifeless desktop. His heart pounded as he tried to regain control, but it was too late. His laptop had been completely wiped. Then, the final message appeared. You're ours now, one way or another. Kyle stumbled backward, his mind racing. They weren't just threatening to expose him. They had taken control of everything. His computer, his identity, his life. But the nightmare didn't end there. The next morning, his parents received a call from the school. Kyle had been reported for suspicious activity involving their computer system. They had no proof yet, but the administration wanted to meet with him. Panic set in. How had they found out? Had S tipped them off as a warning? Kyle's stomach churned. The walls were closing in faster than he could think. Desperate, Kyle returned to his laptop, trying to find a way out to undo the damage he had done. But the deeper he looked, the more he realized how trapped he was. His IP was spoofed, his identity masked, but S knew everything. Every hack, every conversation, every dark corner of the web he had visited. They had it all. In a last-ditch effort, Kyle reached out to some of the hacker communities he used to frequent. He pleaded for help, but most turned him away. They knew the risks of going up against someone like S. Shadow's reputation was legendary for a reason. Finally, one anonymous user sent a reply. You can't fight Shadow. You run. But where could he run? They already had everything on him. There was no escape from the world he had willingly stepped into. Kyle realized then that he had crossed a line from which there was no return. The path he had chosen, the power, the secrets, it all came at a cost. And now, that cost was his life as he knew it. Kyle sat frozen in his chair, staring at the message on the screen. You can't fight Shadow. You run. Run. The word echoed in his mind, but it felt pointless. Where could he go? His identity, his actions? Everything was now in the hands of S, or worse, Shadow himself. Kyle had stepped into a world that was far bigger and darker than he had ever imagined. He had thought he was in control, that he was special, talented. But in the end, he was just another pawn in a much larger game. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. His parents, concerned about his declining behavior, had arranged the school meeting. Kyle had tried to convince them it was nothing, just a misunderstanding, but they were adamant. He could feel their trust in him slipping away. The once proud looks his father gave him were now replaced with worry and suspicion. The night before the meeting, Kyle made a decision. If he was going down, he wouldn't go down quietly. He opened his laptop one last time, determined to find out who S really was. If he could expose them, maybe, just maybe, he could turn things around. Kyle dove deep into the dark web, tracing every conversation, every transaction. Hours passed, and his eyes burned from staring at the screen, but he couldn't stop. Finally, he found something. A small crack in the layers of anonymity surrounding S. It wasn't much, but it was a lead, a hidden server address linked to S's activities. Kyle's heart raced as he accessed it, typing faster than ever before. This was his chance. If he could break in and uncover S's identity, he might have leverage, a way to free himself from their grip. But just as he began to make progress, his screen flickered again. A cold sweat broke out on his skin. The message that followed was different this time. Short, but terrifying. Stop digging. You won't like what you find. Kyle's blood ran cold. He hesitated for a moment, but pressed on. He was too close. The deeper he went, the more the truth began to unravel. But it wasn't what he expected. Suddenly, his entire screen went black. Kyle frantically tried to reboot his system, but nothing worked. Then, a new window popped open, and a video feed began playing. His heart stopped as he recognized the room. His room, captured through his own webcam. Kyle's eyes widened in terror as he realized someone had been watching him this entire time. Every keystroke, every word, every moment had been monitored. Then, Shadow's voice echoed through his speakers, low and distorted. "We own you, Kyle. There's no escape. You were never in control." The screen flickered again, and the video feed changed. This time, it was outside his house. A figure in a dark hoodie stood in the shadows, looking directly at the camera, unmoving. Kyle's breath caught in his throat. They were here. They had come for him. Panic surged through him as he jumped out of his chair, backing away from the laptop. His mind raced, but there was no plan, no escape route. His life had spiraled into a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. The knock at the door was soft at first, then louder. His parents were already asleep, oblivious to the danger lurking outside. Kyle glanced back at the screen one last time. The figure was gone. The knocking stopped. Silence. A final message appeared on his screen. Run. Kyle didn't go to the school meeting the next day. He didn't stay to explain things to his parents or try to fix the mess he created. He simply left. No one knew where he went, and no one ever heard from him again. Weeks later, news broke about a massive data breach that had crippled several corporations. Rumors swirled about a hacker known only as K, a prodigy who had vanished without a trace after angering the wrong people. Kyle's story became a cautionary tale in the hacking community, a reminder that in the digital world, control is just an illusion. And in the end, no matter how deep you go, there's always someone watching.